the web upload either. So all my video programs stopped working, and I can't webcam upload video, so I'm just going to do this as this seems to work. So the issue I wanted to talk about right now is this idea of putting two words together, and specifically spirituality and materialism. So if you think about it, there's two ways that you could put this. It's a common kind of thing, like with relativistic skepticism. That could be skeptical relativism and so on. And sometimes the meaning is quite different, and sometimes it doesn't seem to make too much difference. But grammatically, there is, of course, a difference. There's a noun term and there's a qualifying adjective. So in skeptical materialism, you're talking about materialism that is qualified as a skeptical type of materialism. And with material spirituality, you're talking about spirituality that's qualified as a material type of spirituality. And when I talk about spiritual materialism in the future, because I've been talking about the other thing, material spirituality, this is where my idea that materialism should be defined as things that matter come from. Because if you take the definitions, I was looking up the definition of spirit in Merriam-Webster just to get a normal, idea. And definition one is an animating or vital principle held to give life to physical organisms. Or, I basically adopt that definition of spirit, but it doesn't give the life necessarily. It's associated with that quality of life. Whatever causes or that quality as a result of would count. It's a name for this animating for the fact that the thing's animated, that it's alive, and in the case of a human, that it has this subjective point of view, that there's an ego running there. And I don't mean ego like pumping up your ego, I mean ego as in, ego versus id, right? Now, definition two is a supernatural being or essence as, if capitalized, the Holy Spirit, possibly the soul, definition 2a of the soul, according to Merriam-Webster, an often malevolent being that is bodiless but can become visible, specifically a ghost, definition 2, or D, a malevolent being that enters and possesses a human being. So those are secondary definitions, and I'm adopting the first definition. I love these glasses. By the way, caught sight of them in my camera there. Is the fact that the thing is alive. It's the quality that a thing has before it dies that it doesn't have right after it dies. Right there, you narrow it down, that's the difference. Okay, so looking at materialism from that point of view, well, what is that thing? It's your conscious mind that is experiencing a stream of perceptions. And so that's why I want to define materialism in terms of those perceptions, and I come up with things that matter. Now, what I have been talking about so far, though, is material spirituality, and that's different. That's taking the spirituality idea, which I define in terms of a feeling, a kind of feeling, which is a perception, right? And then since we have this multi-channel perception, we can see and hear things at the same time. We can feel pain and see and hear and taste and all at the same time, and we can have this emotional feeling, a spiritual feeling at that same time. And I'm calling spirituality, well, those experiences where the whole experience across all the channels, while there was a spiritual feeling going on. And I'm saying let's apply that to that, my concept of materialism, which is what really matters out of that. And this idea that the spirit can be separated from the body, I don't believe that, but it's a theory. It's a secondary theory. If there is a concept of livingness and being a living thing, that I want to use the word spirit for, because that's what it's been used for thousands of years, that doesn't depend on whether this secondary theory that spirits can go around on their own without the body is true or not true. And even within my own materialism, it's possible there's energy. Maybe the pattern which characterizes the living subjective experience can fly off as a bunch of electromagnetic radiation. I don't see any reason for that, so I don't believe that, and I believe it's fully embodied, that it doesn't move away from the body stops producing it. It's something produced through the body. And that's a sense in which I'm materialist in the physicalism sense, that everything is physical and this all chains out. And what I think people are mostly missing or fail to give me allowances because of is the fact that I am talking about this as a psychological phenomenon. For example, I've been conscious of the fact, or you could say self-conscious, of the fact that that I said that I think this is a feeling that you need to have a good life or to enjoy your life. Now, I want to say two things about this. First of all, I'm talking about in a psychological sense, in the same way that I might say that there is no Cupid or goddess of love, but you have to have love to be happy. Okay, so in a psychological sense, it doesn't mean that you have to have a relationship with Venus, that Cupid has to shoot its arrow at you, because those entities I don't believe exist. And the other thing I'd like to say is that this is just sort of a bulk of the bell curve kind of an issue. There are, of course, people that don't need much love. It would be hard for me to imagine needing none, but there's certainly solitary people that might get plenty of love from a pet or just from themselves or from their experiences of the world. But the bulk of the people need something more than that, and I think that the same is true of spirituality. That people need this feeling, and so far, what you should be hearing, if you're hearing what I'm describing, what I'm trying to transmit is not a final notion of what this is, but it has to do with a sense of meaning, and I don't mean a particular meaning. I mean the idea that human minds can take meaning from anything. We can see something and it seems meaningless. We can look at something and it seems to have meaning. And that doesn't mean that feeling of meaning is an illusion. I think the feeling of meaning is a lot like the color red. It's not what photons look like in themselves. It's what photons look like to our eyes and our brains. Photons of a certain wavelength that are received, what those look like to us. And I think meaning is the same sort of a phenomena, that it's a tag that the brains put on of, hey, here's a relationship in the real world that is significant. And so it's related to that sense of meaning, and it's related also to Happy Father's Day. And it's related to bah humbug, thank you very much, though. And it's related to, I mean, I like being a father. I still am totally great. I mean, I love being a father. It's a great thing. But Mother's Day, Father's Day, it's, invented to sell more cards and make people feel guilty for not buying Hallmark cards, as far as I'm concerned. Capitalist drivel. Okay, but I did call my dad. So, but anyway, it has to do with meaning, and I think also meaning itself has to do with relationships, and then the spiritual feeling is most intense when there's a large connected network of which I am a part. So, yeah, I guess this is the only way I can make videos now. What's that tell you, though? Google Hangout method is the only way that I can make videos. But it's kind of interesting, because what you do is you broadcast. I kind of like it. I could see a site where it just made it no editing allowed,